Locked in the bunker, shadows shake. One man clapping secrets awake. Board games living, dice they break. Echoes pound and hearts they quake. In the bunker, board games rolling. One man clapping, stories growing. Hard rock thunder, speakers blowing. Clapping loud, the unknown.
Welcome to the sound of one man clapping. I am the one man coming to you direct from the bunker. It's Sunday morning and it's pouring rain. Other than taking time out to record this podcast for your listening pleasure, it will be 100% adulting. True story, and also so lame. Lame. This is a podcast about board gaming culture, and growing old gracelessly. And today it's also about coffee. Sunday morning, and I'm 51, and today is about coffee. This week I had 2 days of board gaming back to back. It was a slow start to the week, but a really good finish. But I got to start the show with two corrections, because here at OMC, of course, we're all about quality of editing, quality of content, quality of character, quality of coffee today. First, I erroneously accredited Solkin to Board and Dice last week. It's because I own a number of T games which are published by Board and Dice. And I've played a number of T games which are published by Board and Dice, but as it turns out, not all T games are published by Board and Dice. Solkin is, of course, published by Czech Games Edition, CGE. Thank you to Marek, one of my listeners on YouTube, for keeping me honest. The second is a little more personal. I did make the claim, although I'm pretty sure I auto-corrected last week right at the end. I did make the claim that I would not play a game for 9 hours straight. Yeah, that's a lie. I 100% would play a game for 9 hours straight. Super Trip and I regularly play ATO, that's Ant Trespass, for 12 hours straight. I guess what I was trying to get at is I wouldn't play TI4 again for 9 hours straight. Of course, I played another game for at least 9 hours just yesterday. We'll get to that. This week we're going to talk about all the games that were. We're going to dip back into FOMOMOFO because that's what I love to do. We're going to take a quick trip through my frontal lobe with voices in my head. And of course we'll be giving someone the clap. Saddle up, OMC crew. Well, this fine week in rainy, chilly May. It is Australia, so that means winter for us. People don't often think of winter and chilly when they think of Australia, and I guess chilly's all relative. I grew up in a town, I guess technically it's a city called Winnipeg, where it is cold as fuck. And when I say cold as fuck, I mean like your balls don't drop till you're 35. It's cold. But chilly in Sydney is like, I don't know, 11 degrees. That's cold for me now. You know, I've acclimatized. I'm soft. I'm still Canadian by blood, but my blood has warmed, and yeah, so it's been a little chilly. And as I mentioned, it was a week with a slow start for gaming, but a good finish. So this week, I didn't play anything all week. I had aspirations of setting up Elder Scrolls again on the table, and of course, because I didn't set it up, I didn't play it. It's not that it's a bear to set up, but it takes a minute. And, you know, work, adulting, it's all bullshit. But Friday, I did have the boys around. I took a day off work Friday because I worked all long weekend. I had some days in lieu in the bank. I took a day off Friday, and I hosted Super Trooper, Dustin, and Battleships here in the bunker for a day. And so we kicked off with one of my plans, one of my hopes for this year is to play every Lacerda I own and every Lacerda Super Trooper owns, because I am a fan. And we played one that Super Trooper had bought in, I don't know when, a long time ago. He kickstarted it, so that'll tell you when. He had Escape Plan and had never played. May, of course, we're trying to dedicate some of our time in May to our shelf of first. So we played Escape Plan as our first game of the day. So, spoiler alert, I loved Escape Plans. Escape Plan gets a bit of a mixed review, I think. And I can see why. You know, so broad brush, if you haven't played Escape Plan, you have this emergent city, because you've got tiles that come out every round. There are only 3 rounds in the game, which seems like a woefully short game because you only get, you know, ostensibly 3 turns in a round, unless you've invested in extra turns. And I might touch on that. I might not. I haven't had enough coffee. So basically, you've got 2 little city tiles out, and then in the first round, your players are going to take turns putting 4 more tiles out. So you're starting with 6 tiles, and there are movement rules through the tiles. Every turn, your turn is move and do something where you finish, right? So that your move may come at a cost. You've got wounds, which are basically a currency, because if you're running for... Back it up. Jesus Christ, James. Escape Plan is about a bunch of dudes and ladies. You know, it's instead of Ocean's 11, it's Ocean's 1 to 5. And you've robbed a bank, and now you got to get away. And in order to get away, you actually have to get out of the city in round 3. Let's start with what the game's about. That would be really good. That tells you how much coffee I need this morning. It might be a 3 coffee episode. Whew. So, yes, we all start in the middle. We've got our little pawns. We're all at the hospital because I'm assuming we've all had bullet holes filled or whatever it is. I think we start at the hospital. And then you've got this emergent town, this emergent city that unfolds around you. And each city tile is going to have something on it, whether it's a safe house or a business. It could have a helipad. It could have a rail station. And so in, I think it's reverse turn order. Could be turn order. I don't know. It was fun. You're going to place one of these tiles out. So you start with 2 starter tiles, and before we start round 1, we're going to have 4 more tiles on there. So we're going to have 6 tiles in a cluster in the middle of the board. And on your turn, you're basically going to move, and you're going to do something with where you land, because you're either going to land at a business or a safe house or a store where you can buy flak jackets and stuff, or crack open lockers for money. Because it's Escape Plan, it's all about getting out of town with the most money you can. And so you've got money as a currency, which counts, and you've got money which you collect from different areas, which also counts. And you've got a secret card when you start, and it's got every location on the back of the card printed in teeny tiny print. So when you're 51, you might accidentally go to the wrong place and do yourself out of points. Not that I did. I'm just saying you could. And so you're basically going to different spaces based on the card matrix you've got. And you do one of 2 things when you're there. You either take income out of the business or out of the safe house, or you take your stash, and your stash is a bunch of cash you've got there. And you just you make it known by dropping your cube on the income or the stash indicator at the location. Simple. And then people know you've either taken income from there or you've now got end-game points out of that. They don't know how many because it varies from space to space. They know you've got some end-game points because you've got some hidden information. Your money and whatever is hidden information. On top of that, every hex except for the hospital has a number of police on it. And the police come in 3 different grades and colors. You've got, I don't know, I think it's municipal, state, and SWAT. I don't know. They're 3 different colors. They're blue, red, and black. That's why there's no blue meeples. Super Trooper always plays blue, so he didn't sulk about not playing blue, but, you know, he had to, I think he played pink. So he was Mr. Pink in our Reservoir Dogs team of 4. And if you've got to move out of a hex, you've got to take a wound for every police officer that's in the hex you're leaving. And you can only take 3 before bad things happen. And so that's a currency you've got to manage, because you can heal wounds by going to the hospital, or you've got a Band-Aid on your board that you can flip over, which heals 1 wound. And if you get a 4th wound, you get handcuffs. So handcuffs go on your board, and they actually block out one of the resource spaces you can use for endgame points. It's really clever. It's a really clever sort of mechanic. And to be honest, it's not a hard game to understand as far as Lacerda's go. It's probably the lightest of his that I've played. I haven't played the Gallerist yet. I think that's the last one that I've never played. So I know that's on our list. I think it's the last one. When I say lightest, there's still some major strategic things you've got to decide. And in fact, I would say it's the most tactical of the Lacerdas, because if you're last in turn order and everyone's racing to the nightclub, because the nightclub's just been unveiled, and they might need points or they want income. Well, if 3 people go to the nightclub, then the nightclub's closed in a 4-player game. There's no more money to get out of there unless you happen to have one of the all-precious keys, which, of course, in Super Troopers version were lovely metal enamel-colored keys. Very shiny. Shiny! They were fantastic. Just so tactile and gorgeous. So there is a bit of a race, but there is a very deep tactical instrument embedded in this game, because you can go, well, all right, round 3, I've got 3 turns, 4 if I pay for this extra turn. There's a number of ways to get an extra turn. I've got 3 turns, and I'm going to plan to do this, this, and this. And then all the mofos at the table go to the nightclub, for example, and you can't get into the nightclub because you don't have a key. Or if you do have a key, you also need keys to open lockers which have endgame bennies in them, which I didn't open any of in the game. So I'm going to blame my loss on the fact that I didn't open any lockers, despite the fact that I actually went to the fine OMC team on the wider web and said, hey, any advice for this? And one of you fine people said, yeah, Open lockers, motherfucker. You were much more polite than that. And I'm sorry, I don't have your name in front of me. But you said, make sure you open lockers. I'm like, yeah, okay, that sounds good. And I played the whole game. And I didn't open a single locker. So, did not win. There's not much more that really unfolds to escalate the game, to be honest. Every day you put out 4 more of these tiles that come out. So you start with 6, then you go to 10, then you're on 14 tiles. And there's a mechanic which blocks off the 3 exits. There are 3 exits that start in the game, and you don't know where they are because they're somewhere buried in your stack of tiles. It could have come out in turn 1. It might not come out till round 3. But there's a reveal in the 3rd round that lets you know which exit you need to get to. And if you don't get to the exit, you can't win. I don't think you even score. Zero. You fail. You get nothing, which is wild, right? And I can understand why traditional Euro players go, fuck this shit. What do you mean I get 0? What do you mean I don't finish the game? I can understand that. I got absolutely fisted on the deal because the first of the team that goes, I'm out of here, and gets the exit costs him nothing. The second one has to pay a bribe to the police to get out, and third and fourth have to pay a much higher bribe. So if you're thinking, well, I'm going to get out, I'm only going to pay $2,000, and then 2 other fuckers go before you, and all of a sudden you're going to pay $10,000 to get out that gate, your end game gets double-fisted, right? It is just, it's actually really, really cool. Layered over that, you've got it's not infamy, what is it? It's like infamy, it's your cop approval rating. Oh, God. There's not enough coffee in the world this morning. And certain things you do increase it. And increasing it does good things for you, but also does bad things. The higher it goes, the more negative points you get at the end of the game. The higher it goes, though, the higher you are in turn order. It's not infamy. I don't know. It's like how nefarious you are, notorious you are. It's not either of those things either. I can't word today. I really enjoyed Escape Plan. I really, really enjoyed Escape Plan. Is it my favorite Lacerda? No. But it is a great game, and it's a very different game to any of the Lacerdas. And I have to say, it's a different game, I think, to any I've played. It's because it's 2 rounds of trying to build your point structure, and then it's a race. It's fucking Benny Hill in round 3 because you want to do something in that third round. But if you're doing too many somethings and you're last to that exit, it's a mess for you. It is an absolute... I mean, it's only $10,000. I say $10,000. It's a 10 in the game. But money's tight. Like, you're collecting money from your stash houses. You can't spend that. That goes into your Hamburglar sack of loot to take out of the game when you're done. So there's no spendy on that. Your spendy money is harder to come by. And if you haven't got 10... Man, like, at least I had a way to grab a bit of cash on my second last turn and actually get out and score. And I didn't do horribly, I don't think. I don't know what a good score is in Escape Plan. It wasn't my score. But I didn't do horribly because I didn't have a lot of minuses. I think Super Trooper had minus 9,000 for the Tyranny track or whatever it's called. And if you have wounds, if you have 3 wounds left on your board, that's 20 points a wound. Like, there's a lot of minuses. But the scores were in the hundreds. I think Dusty won with a score of 9,000 or something. I don't know. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it enough that I asked Super Trooper to leave it here in the bunker because the night before when we were all doing our homework for the game, I watched a little bit of a solo game, and the solo puzzle looks really clever. You've got 2 bots that are running around doing other stuff, and it's a puzzle, like most solo games are, but it's a timed puzzle, and it looked really clever. So it's sitting there on the shelf, and it's all beautiful aqua and money-colored glory waiting for me. And Escape Plan, 2 thumbs up, would adult my way through that again. Escape Plan is, of course, by Vital Lacerda, art by Ian O'Toole, and published by Eagle Griffin Games. So after that game, Battleships drives down from like Papua New Guinea or some shit to get here for games, which I appreciate. But he can't stay very late because he's often going to do the school pickup afterwards. So we didn't have a lot of time. Escape Plan wasn't hugely long. I think, it was our first playthrough. None of us had played it before. I want to say it was about 3 hours. And that was with the review teach at the start and lunch break towards the end. Or did we finish? Anyway, we had lunch. Anyway, we've got a game of Skyrise in after that. And I know I've talked about this. We've played this a few times this year. I really like Skyrise. Not the least of which, because I own the Uber Deluxe Chunky Buildings, Metal Keys, 3D Zeppelin version, but because I think the gameplay is really clever. So Skyrise, if you're a regular listener, just maybe go get a cup of coffee or something, or fast forward 4.5 minutes. But Skyrise is an auction game. It's an auction game with, I wouldn't call it push your luck, but it is kind of a push your luck. I mean, all auction games are push your luck, I suppose. But it's an auction game, and you've got a number of buildings in front of you, and your buildings all have a number on their butt. And around the table, we all have different numbers on our buildings. So no one has the same number for bidding. And what's going to happen is you've got this beautiful, well, I've got this beautiful 3D floating island in the sky you've got these 4 quadrants in a central island. And each of the spaces are divided into a number of neighborhoods, which are color-coded. Banana, yellow, brown, blue. There's a blue and a green, I think. So there's 4. And they've got a little symbol on them as well. It could be anything. It could be fucking pickled herring. It doesn't matter. And so what you're doing is just the first turn starts at the middle island, and you take one of your buildings and you put it butt side up so everyone can see the number. So you might say, well, I'm going to put a 2 on there. I don't really want this space. I'm going to put a 2 on there. And the next person in line has to put another one of their buildings upside down, and the number has to be higher than yours. And so on, round and round the table until everyone passes. Somebody puts down their building and says 57, and no one wants to spend their 57 building, because wherever your building that wins is on the board, you get to claim that neighborhood. So let's say Super Trooper wins the round with 57. Everyone goes, yep, no, it's all yours, get stuffed. There's a little token on that neighborhood. Now, the tokens are all randomly distributed at the start of the game, and the colors on the tokens match the 4 neighborhoods. So he's going to flip his building right side up. He's going to grab the token. That token goes into his little player board in the appropriate color, because you're trying to set collect the different colors. And then everyone takes their buildings back that didn't win, and it starts again with Super Trooper. And he can now bid. He can start his bidding from the middle island or from any building that is out in the city. So if it's turn 2, he'll be starting at his building. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to play the head game of, well, that's a neighborhood I want because it either is the right color neighborhood or the right color token on the neighborhood. So how do I snake this bid around there and then fuck everyone with one of my really big buildings to grab what I need? That's the head game, right? Because at the end of the game, and I'm going to come back a bit, at the end of the game, you're going to score for your buildings for the neighborhood they're on with a multiplier on your board of how many tokens of that color you have. So for example, if you've got the banana yellow track on your player board, if you have 4 tokens on there, you're going to score 6 points for every building you have in the banana yellow neighborhoods. They have a name. I'm calling them banana yellow this morning. It's like fucking corn from last week. Banana yellow neighborhoods. So you're going to score 6 points for every building you have in a banana yellow neighborhood. Now, you've got to put the building in the banana yellow neighborhood, and you've got to collect the yellow tokens from wherever the hell they are. They could be on any neighborhood, right? It doesn't matter what. They're randomly distributed. So if they're on a yellow one, like, you get lucky. So one of the first chases you want to do is, well, where do tokens match the neighborhood? Because that's good for me. If you get a brown token on a brown neighborhood, you want to chase those because, whew, not that I win this game often. I'm not like, don't take me as the ultimate strategist and tactician for Skyrise. I'm just saying, if you can somehow grab a neighborhood that has a matching token on it, that's great, because you're going to score that neighborhood and the token's going to add your score. So at the end of the game, you're going to score that way. There are also 4 patrons up the side of the board. They're 4 very stately looking wealthy people. They're probably friends of Elon Musk and Captain Cheeto. And they have a randomized token face down on there. And the tokens are, from memory, 3, 4, 5, and 8 on the back. And they're A, B, C, and D on the front. So you don't know which token is which. So they're not A, B, C, and D. The fronts don't have a letter, but they go into patron A, B, C, or D. And there's one of either 3, 4, 5, or 8 on the back. And in the neighborhoods, you also have these patron tokens. So you've got these little tokens that say A, B, C, and D. So if you collect those tokens instead of the neighborhood color tokens, they go onto your player board, and they will give you the number of points that are on that patron. So if you happen to grab the D token, you get to have a peek at the D patron, and you go, the D patron, well, the D patron has 8 points. Well, I want D tokens. So you're going to chase D tokens, right? There's nothing wrong with getting an A token that's worth 3 points. It's still 3 points, but it's not the beautiful benefit that the 8-pointer is. Then layered on top of this, you have one city wonder building. It's one uber gorgeous building that is different for each of the factions, and it unlocks in Era 2, so you play over 2 rounds. And this wonder building, at any time, you can drop it down and you immediately win the auction. You can't, it's like your Trump building. You can't lead with it, because of course you can't lead with Trump, but after the opening bid, you can drop it anywhere and go, I want that, I've got it. You also happen to have a special scoring card that when you play the Wonder Building, you score that card for whatever the scenario is in the card. The card might say you have to have 3 buildings on each island, or you have to have 2 buildings. Yeah, your buildings all have to be in pairs. For every pair of buildings next to each other, you get 3 points. Whatever it is. But when you drop that Wonder, you score the Wonder card, you also immediately win the auction. So there's a lot of tooth in the decision space for this. I've made it sound way more complicated than it is. It's really not. You put a building out, and if the building number's high enough, you get what's there. And then endgame scoring, it's not convoluted, but it's a little bit three-way in that you've got to have buildings in the right color, and you've got to have tokens in the right color. There's a couple more layers of scoring. I'm not going to bother with those. You also have end of round 1 scoring. There's some cards that you're working towards on the side, and they stay for both rounds, and you score them again end of round 2. Skyrise is a delight of absolute poker faces and trying to outfox who's bidding. Now, the ultimate fox on Friday, Battleships, we went into round 2, and he happened to have just the right array of building numbers. Because one of the great things about Skyrise is if the next bid can't be made. So, for example, if you've bid yourself into a cul-de-sac of some sort, like you've dropped a building into an area where there is no adjacent bid, well, you immediately win. No one else can bid next to you. So there are a number of spaces on the board where there are natural sort of cul-de-sacs due to rivers, whatever the case is. But of course, as buildings come out, there are more and more little nooks and crannies, which basically are, if you drop your bid in there, it's an insta-win. So I'm pretty sure on the first turn of round Era 2, it might have been the second turn, Battleships just dropped his 6 buildings one turn after another and claimed whatever the fuck he wanted because there were a million little spots that we'd left open. And he went, well, I'm going to take that, and I'm going to take that, 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 I'm going to take that. And he cleaned up all the patron discs. I think there were 2 patron discs he didn't take. And he had a number of other great things. And of course, if you're first out at the end of the round, you get the key to the city, which of course gives you an extra 10 points and blah, blah, blah. So I think on his first turn of Era 2, he finished his role in the game and he just watched us play the second round. We're like, oh, well, that's an interesting thing to do. I'm pretty sure he smoked us by like 60 points or some garbage. Anyway, we had a great game. We played the rest of the game with Battleships in the sideline going, oh, I see what you did there, but I don't think you can catch me because, I drive down from Papua New Guinea, so I deserve to win. For those of you outside Australia, you cannot drive from Papua New Guinea, okay? You would need to be on some sort of sea voyage for quite a while. Skyrise was a delight. It's always a delight. We always get the comparison at the end to Ra, because Ra is another one of our favorite auction games. And Battleship said, I think I like that more than Ra. And silence fell over the table, because Ra is one of Super Troopers' favorite games, and we all kind of just went, ooh. Now, I also think I like it more than Ra. It's not to say I don't like Ra, but I think I made that same comparison last game, and I do think I like Skyrise more than Ra, just because I think there's more bite in the decision space, and that's not to say I don't love Ra. There's no chanting in Skyrise. There's no huge gargantuan Ra-shaped gavel to slam down on the table to invoke the wrath of a long-dead god. But I do love Skyrise. I think Skyrise is fantastic. I've only ever played it at 4, and you can play it at lower counts. So I'd be interested in maybe trying a 2-player game. You only play with 2 neighborhoods, and I'd be interested in seeing if that tightness, it would be more cat and mouse, I think, if it was a 2-player game. But I'd be interested in seeing how it plays, because it can play at 2 apparently. That's Skyrise. Skyrise is by Gavin Brown, Sebastian Pauchon, Adam Wise, and it's art by Adam Bosley, Damien Mammalidi, and James Van Niekerk, and published by Roxley Games. I do have the playable version, which was the Kickstarter Uber Deluxe version. So after that, Battleships had to head home, and it was only, 1:30, 1:45 in the afternoon. Super Trooper fam and my fam, we were all heading out for dinner that night, and Dustin was heading home, but we still had time. We had a bit of time. So we played, and it was unplanned, so we had to do a cold teach with Dustin, which was fine in the end. We played Galactic Cruise. Now, if you've been listening, which you probably have, because you're all good little women clappers, I love Galactic Cruise. I've played Galactic Cruise a number of times here in the bunker. It's a fantastic game, and Dustin hadn't played Galactic Cruise. So Super Trooper kind of went, and gestured over towards the Galactic Cruise on the shelf, and I went, yeah, yes, get that out. We got time. I got time. And so we played a game of Galactic Cruise. And look, I'm not going to belabor Galactic Cruise. I love Galactic Cruise. I think Galactic Cruise is not just a triumph of a game, but it is remarkable that, and to the best of my knowledge, this design team, this is literally their first game. It's their publishing company. They did it through Kickstarter. The the production quality of Galactic Cruise is Eagle Griffin level. You know, when I say Eagle Griffin level, I'm talking about Eagle Griffin Lacerda's, because I know they do some other level games as well. But Eagle Griffin's Lacerda level production quality. I did take the extra deluxe bits, so I've got the acrylic tokens for the ads and the chunky metal money, and the so good. Galactic Cruise. Galactic Cruise. You're running a cruise company. You're sending spaceships to space. You're sending people to space. You've got to line everything up before you launch. I think Super Troopers wiped the table with us on this one. I kind of went the route of one big ship and rinse, repeat. I couldn't quite get... I did get a second ship out right at the end. But look, Galactic Cruise is fantastic. There's a million... If you want to learn about Galactic Cruise, go watch some videos. If you can get the deluxe edition aftermarket, which I think you probably can. I think All Play sells it here in Australia. I think you can order an All Play. There's a playmat for the board, and the playmat is gorgeous. I don't have the playmat. The playmat's gorgeous in that, because when you set up for the game, you've got to put out certain tiles in the playmat. For X, Y, and Z, you've got different things that are randomized setup. The playmat has cutouts, so the tiles sit flat in the playmat, which is really nice. As I said, I don't have it. I probably won't get it because, again, it's one of those things that I've seen it in person. I saw it at the last Board Game Barbecue game day. There was a guy playing Galactic Cruise next to us and had it out. It looks amazing. I don't need it. You don't need it, Hammers. You don't need the Galactic Cruise. You don't need the Galactic Cruise playmat. You don't need it. It's not necessary. It's true. I don't need it. Galactic Cruise, I'm not going to go into it, but we loved it. It was Super Trooper Dustin and I. Dustin loved Galactic Cruise. He had a great time with it. I always have a great time with it. We have yet to play with the upgraded accommodations. So if you know anything about Galactic Cruise, when you're building your ship, you've got to build 2 sections will give you 1 cabin. While the upgraded version, the cabins are all offset. So rather than all lining up in the middle, you've actually got to plan your blueprints because the cabins are all offset. I'm like, I don't know if I can be bothered with that level of brain bake and not getting things to line up. In the end, really, it would just mean flushing that market more often, which I don't think, other than this last week, I'd never seen it done. But that's obviously why that mechanic's there. If you don't know anything about Galactic Cruise, the last 40 seconds made no sense to you whatsoever. Go watch a video about Galactic Cruise. If you like heavy Euros, it is an absolute triumph of game. That is designed by TK King, Dennis Northcott, Colton Thompson, art by Ian O'Toole, and published by Kinson Key. So I've managed to get myself another coffee, so saddle up. Yesterday, I had a Frosthaven day with, again, I was at Super Trooper's house this time because he is holding, he's residing at his place, Coop's copy of Frosthaven. So it was Coop, Super Trooper, Dusty, and myself, and this game, I'll call it a game of Frosthaven. I don't know how long it's been going on for. Since it arrived at Coop's place, we started pretty quickly. I don't know how many scenarios or sessions I've played of this, 18 or 19. The nice thing about Frosthaven is you can drop in, drop out, right? So I haven't been able to be there for every session of Frosthaven. I've been there for some of them. And so it was nice to get in on this one because I hadn't played Frosthaven in several months. So Frosthaven, if you are a gamer and maybe have hit your head lately, or there's been a gas leak at your house, or perhaps you literally live under a rock, it's the spiritual successor to Gloomhaven. Frosthaven is probably the biggest campaign game out there, and I'm guessing, I'm not talking about 8 AM Trespass and that sort of stuff. AM Trespass is a different beast altogether. But from how many scenarios you have, I think there's 120 or something. You don't have to play them all, but you also have, these incredibly detailed city steps, and where your city's under siege, and you've got to build all your stuff up at the city, and you've got these awesome little advent calendars. So when you make a potion for the first time, you pop out a window and it creates a new potion that you have access to. It's really clever. It's really cool. You have to really want to play, right? You have to really want to play because it's not a slog by any means, but it's an investment. So we played Frosthaven. We started at 9 and we finished, I think, at 4 o'clock. Finished at 4. So that's 7 hours. We got through 2 scenarios. And the first one, I think, is easily the longest scenario I've ever played. Not because it was overly complicated, there was too much going on. I mean, there were a shit ton of monsters. There were 5 different monsters on them, or 6 different monsters out in the dungeon. And of course, in between everyone's turn, you've got to activate all of those and work through them. And I think that one went a full 12 rounds. That was a full 12 rounds to get through that one. How I wasn't exhausted at the end, I think I had my last turn and wasn't exhausted because, of course, Frosthaven, like Gloomhaven, like Jaws of the Lion, it's a game of attrition with your hand of cards. Every time you run through them, you've got to burn one and you go back and start again. Oh, it was a beast of a session, but we did some great stuff, and one of the greatest, not greatest, we had some great moments, we had some great ones. The fact that we won both those sessions, actually, and no spoilers, I think we're in the 70s, it was session 70, scenario 73 and 74, or something like that. We literally managed to eke out a win on both of those scenarios on what would have been possibly, or close to it, our very last turn, because everyone was close to exhaustion, everyone was very close to just or death, which is death in Frosthaven still is exhaustion by loss of hit points or exhaustion by loss of cards, and we managed to win both of those, I think, on what would have been or is very close to our very last opportunity to do so. And for me, that's a delight in that it tells me that these scenarios were play tested to absolute fuckery, because the balance is there. Because honestly, 2/3 of the way through both of these, I'm like, man, this is we're dung beetles and we got to push this shit to the top of Mount Everest. This is not like what, but we did it and it was amazing. They were both really, really fun. One of the great things that came out of yesterday finally is I have been playing the same character since my first game of Frosthaven, the Deer Drifter. I'm very fond of the Drifter. I had a great time with the Drifter. He's one of the starting characters in the game. He's one of the, I want to say it's simpler. He's a simple character. He's a simple man. He has a club and a bow. He likes to bash shit. He doesn't take any nonsense. But he has this really great mechanic in that you've got these cards, these buffs that go out on the table, and tokens that scoot across the cards every time you use the buff, but he's also got a way to refresh them. So some of his cards and mechanics allow you to bring them back to the start of the track and get them again. And of course, they're all XP farms, which is great. Every time they go up, 1 or 2 spaces, you get a little bit of experience. I really enjoyed the Drifter. I had a lot of fun with the Drifter. The Drifter retired yesterday, finally. I had to kill 2 Lurker Claw Crushers, and we couldn't find Lurker Claw Crushers for the first 16 or 17 scenarios that I played of Frosthaven. And finally we found them. I managed to bash their heads in. We had crab for dinner, and the Drifter went off in the distance and retired. Good old Drifter. And so I am now playing the Necromancer. Now, I am quite fond of, I was offered 2 or 3 boxes to choose from, and I said, tell me about this one. And Coop went, well, that's the Necromancer. I went, huzzah, I'm the Necromancer. I didn't even hear, there was one of them was some robot transformer, something. I don't know. I heard Necromancer. I'm like, whoop, I'm in. Take me down that path. And he's wild. Now, I only got to play 1 scenario with him. And of course, if you've played Gloomhaven and retired a character, or played, Frosthaven, retired a character, your first game with some of these wilder characters, your first scenario, it's a little bit of, well, can we go back in time an hour now? I'd really like to make different choices. Look, we finished the scenario. It was successful. I have a much greater appreciation for how to build my deck going into the next one, and I think it's a great character. Basically, he can summon all kinds of fun stuff being a Necromancer, but summoning it often comes at the cost of his own health. He doesn't have much health, so I am officially a back row fighter, but I had a blast. I had a great time yesterday. Yeah, it was good fun. Coop owns everything Frosthaven. He's got the big war chest, the big wooden war chest. We've got these beautiful, if you hop on Facebook, you'll see there's a photo of it yesterday. We've got these beautiful player dashboards that hold everything, and they're all magnetized, and they're all gorgeous. And it's a beautiful tactile experience, and spending 9 hours at the table with 3 of my mates, slaying monsters, and, listening to a bit of narrative in between, and great day. Love Frosthaven. It's heaps of fun. I love the drop-in, drop-out mechanic of it. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. And that, of course, is by Isaac Childress. It's art by an army. I would love to sit here and name every artist, but I haven't had enough coffee. Published by Cephalofair. And we rounded that off with a bit of lighter fare. So we were at Super Trooper's house. So that means it was his family, my family. Dustin and Coop were there. Beelzebubbles had a friend over for a sleepover. And so we played a game of Flip 7. Now, we've played Flip 7 recently, and we talked about it on the pod. Of course, the first game we played of Flip 7 ended in a few tears for the Peanut because she busted so many times. She had a better run this time. But Flip 7, man, the fist pumps, the squeals, the cheering, it's such a simple game. It's such a simple game. And it's so good. I think we were playing 8. There's 8 of us at the table playing. It's fast. You go around the table. And look, if you didn't listen to last week or the week before, I can't remember last time I played Flip 7. Cards number 1 to 12. There's 12 12s. There's 5 5s. There's 2 2s in the deck. There's a few power-up cards. And you get Delta card. And when they come back around to you, they say, do you want another card? So if you've got a 12, your chance of getting another 12 is very high because there are 11 more in the deck if they're not on the table. And you say yes, you get a card. If it's a 12, you're out. If it's anything else, you're still in. So you get a 12 and a 5. They go around the table, they come back around. You go, would you like another card? They go, yep. You get an 11. So you have 3 different cards. That's amazing. Right? They come back around. You take another card. If you get a 12, 11, or a 5, you're out. You get something else and so forth. At any time you can go, no, I'm going to stick. And whatever you have in front of you goes into your points bank because it's first to 200 wins. So you bust in this game. You absolutely, it's all about busting. It's all about busting. But Beelzebubble had her little friend over for a sleepover who had never played this before. I got the feeling she hasn't played many games because, maybe I've got it wrong. Anyway, one of the magical bits of Flip 7 is if you manage to get 7 different numbers in front of you, the round is immediately over and you get bonus points. I think you get 15 extra points, right? That happened like 2 or 3 times in the game last night, which is amazing. However, there are also these power-up cards. So there are times 2s, which obviously double your score. There's cards that just straight up add a number, add 5, add 8, add 10 to your score, and they don't count as a card, so you can't bust on them. So if you have cards, then you'll also have this add 10, and it doesn't increase your busting. It also doesn't add to your get 7 cards and end the round. Hence the term Flip 7, the name's Flip 7. So this young lady, who had never played before, on her first game, she was already in the lead. In the last round we played, she managed to get 7 out and a times 2. So she got her full score plus the 15 points times 2. I think her score for that one round was 135 or something ridiculous. And we were all pissing ourselves laughing. It was hilarious that it was like, well, I'll take another card. I'll take another card. I'll take another card. And then she had 7 and a times 2. And it was game over for everyone else. Flip 7 is a delight. For the $24 or $27 it's going to cost you, it is an absolute win. I will play Flip 7 any day of the week. It is super, super fun. And I reckon it would be, I think I said this last time, Board Game Barbecue's arranged to give a copy away to everybody who's going to PlayCon. So huzzah, thank you to the team Board Game Barbecue. You are all absolute legends. I think it will play just fine at 3. You know, the Peanut, the Fox, and I will play Flip 7, and it's boing, 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 boing. It'll be cheers and giggles and whatever else, and great times. Flip 7 is by Eric Olson, art by O'Neill Mobile. Published by everybody. Published by everybody because it's published by like 11 different publishers in different countries. That'll do it for the games that were. I hope to play some more games this week because that's my goal in life. Welcome to FOMOMOFO, where I take you through my personal angst-ridden journey of capitalist acquisitionism. As always, this is not an exhaustive list of crowdfunding projects, but merely those that have my personal attention, either because they are by a design development team I like, a theme I enjoy, or because they have pretty toys. And sometimes, hopefully, it's all 3. Because when it's all 3, I am powerless to not just hand over all my money. This week, there's not a lot that I'm watching in crowdfunding live. I want to talk about on Kickstarter, I want to talk about Battle Monsters, because this is one. Restoration Games does some pretty cool stuff. They do they do the Unmatched series, they do the Thunder Road series. If I've got that wrong, send me a correction. I'll sort myself out next week. But what they tend to do, Return to Dark Tower, they tend to take games that have been around, or IP that's been around, like in the case of Unmatched, and they do something fresher with it. So Battle Monsters is a game of old, which is just that. It's kaijus on the table. It's Godzilla versus Kong. It's Mothra. It's monsters battling on the table. And to be honest, it looks like a heap of fun. It really does. And when this was announced, I was like, ooh, let's keep an eye on Battle Monsters. So Battle Monsters launched last week on Kickstarter. And my first reaction was, what the actual fuck? Holy shit. Okay, now, I'm not cheap. You know I'm very happy to splash out on a game. Very happy. Okay, I've got Aeon Trespass everything for Aeon Trespass. I've got some big games in the pipeline that I have gone really big on. So, Battle Monsters, there are 2 game boxes you can get. So there's 2 monsters in each. It's Godzilla and King Kong. And I'm sorry, my kaiju knowledge isn't fantastic. I will pause and go look it up. Okay, I lied. Your choices are Godzilla versus King King Ghidorah, or Kong versus Mechagodzilla. Those are the 2 boxes you can buy, right? So those are the monsters that come in the boxes. Now, I'm not going to lie, Mechagodzilla, oh my god, I'm such a fan of Mechagodzilla. I'm a Godzilla fan. I watched Godzilla in black and white 9,000 times when I was a kid. Gen X, Sunday afternoon, it's on every week pretty much. That and King Kong, the original King Kong, in black and white. So monster movies, I'm all over monster movies. Pacific Rim was such a shit movie, and I fucking love it. I love it. Pacific Rim 2 took this shit level and went, we're going to make this even shittier and even weirder and even more impossible to believe. And I loved it. If they make a Pacific Rim 3, it's like monster movie porn for me. I love that stuff. So this is a tough one for me. But, not really. So each box, which basically has 2 monsters and a double-sided player board and some stuff in it, is $200 Australian. Now, $200 Australian for 2 monsters. Now, if you want both boxes with Mothra, because if you're going to buy this game and you don't buy Mothra, you need to just check that your brain chemistry levels are okay. And I'm not making light of people with brain chemistry issues, okay? But you need to just get a blood test done and make sure you're okay. Because if you don't want Mothra, then we cannot be friends. It's crazy. So if you want both boxes and Mothra, it's $475 Australian. That's fine. Do I have a $500 game in the bunker? Let me look around. I have one. It's way more than $500. Do I have more than $500 worth of Too Many Bones? 100%. Elder Scrolls wasn't $500. I do have. It says Vanguard was probably $3. I'm just scouting around team here. Castles of Burgundy was probably $3 because I got all the fancy shit to go with it. I do have Enormity coming from Into the Unknown, which is way more than $500. Am I happy to spend $500 in a game? Yeah, of course I am. For sure. Oh, I've got Deceased coming. Deceased was easily over $500. I should, small correction, I allegedly have Deceased coming. I believe it'll come. I think Simon's going to be fine. I'm happy to eat my words in, 6 months if that's the case. But I have Deceased coming. I easily spend over $500 on Deceased. So I'm okay to spend $500 in a game. I'm not okay to spend $500 in a game where I have a plastic monster, and here's the gameplay. I'm attacking you, Super Trooper. I'm rolling these 5 dice. There's my hits. Super Trooper's going to roll 4 dice, and 3 dice, whatever, and pick 2 of those to defend. Okay? Then he's going to get some hit points. Then I'm going to stomp around a little. I'm going to roll some more dice, and he's going to roll some more dice. And look, maybe there's more to the gameplay. I've watched a little bit of gameplay. I've read a little bit of the rule book, but it's basically I'm going to stomp around, and I'm going to roll some dice, and you're going to roll some dice, and then you're going to take a damage. Then we're going to stomp around, and you're going to roll some dice. I'm going to roll some dice, and I'm going to take some damage. If I don't do that, I'll play Risk. I'm going to go back 27 years and play Risk. Don't get me wrong. For what's worth, there's nothing wrong with Risk. I played a shitload of Risk growing up, right? I thought Risk was an absolute masterpiece. And to be honest, for its time and for what it was, Risk is still playable if you've got 4 hours. I don't think it's 4 hours worth of game anymore. Personally, I've got Risk. I've got Lord of the Rings Risk, which I love. And I've got Risk 2210 AD, which is a pretty good version of Risk. I've not played either of those in like 7 years. But if I want to move around and roll a bit of dice and you roll a bit of dice and then we all resolve a bit of stuff, I'm not sure I've got $400, $475 Australian for that. If you want the whole game with all the deluxe bits, which of course you do, acrylic tokens and upgraded dice and whatever, blah, 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 it's $600 Australian. Okay, and I have no problem with a $600 game. Now, if you are so deep into kaiju lore that this is just, you cannot resist this, I respect that. right? Like, if I was a little bit more mad for, like, Godzilla and Kong and that sort of stuff in my middle age, and then I'm 51, I can spend my money whatever I want. Whatever I want. I can't spend $200 on a box with two kaijus that are going to stomp around. I'm going to roll dice, you're going to roll dice, and that's how the game's going to end. It's a hard pass for me. To be honest, I think if the gameplay was a little meatier, I might go, yeah, I'll get the Mecha Godzilla box. Just for shits and giggles, to throw it down the table. I don't know that I can justify it. Maybe. Look, the campaign's not over. I've been known to go down this road and at the last minute go, yeah, but it's Mecha Godzilla. So maybe, but of course, if I do that and I don't get Mothra, am I really getting anything at all? Right? Because if you're not getting Mothra, you're not getting anything. That's Battle Monsters Restoration Games. It is currently sitting at... The campaign is currently sitting at 634,000 Australian dollars. To their credit, this is one of the first campaigns I've seen in a long time that has a funding goal that is really quite chunky. They said $250,000 US is their funding goal. You know, most of these things, they go, well, our funding goal is $55,000 or it's $37,000 because that's how you play the metric game with Kickstarter. The faster you hit your funding goal, the faster you go to the top of the list. You hit the hot list, the pledges, blah, 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 blah. Look, I love me some monsters. To their credit, it's all top shelf. It's like dual layer boards. It's, you know, all the Titans, the Kaijus, they all come pre-washed. The Titans really, they look fantastic. You know, the sculpts are great. They've got bases. I guess, you know, there's other stuff going on. Like there's other bits that go out. I've said no. Maybe I'll look at it deeper. I'm not going to be in this for $500. I can tell you that much. But maybe one box that we can bring them out and stomp around. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. To their credit, it's flat rate shipping. You get one box, you get 27 boxes. It's $55 Australian. So you get 27 kilos of plastic, it's $55. You get one game box, it's $55. But it's $55, right? So if I'm going to get a $200 game, it's $55. That's $255. Look. Anyway, if that's your flavor, go for it. I'm not an all or nothing girl. I mean, I sometimes am, but with stuff like this, like, I can look at it and go, do I just get the one box because you've got Godzilla and King Ghidorah, or you've got Kong and Mecha Godzilla? To be honest, Kong and Mecha Godzilla is pretty darn attractive. So if I was to do Kong and Mecha Godzilla, it would be, I don't know, it'd be over $300 for Kong and Mecha Godzilla and Mothra and shipping. It would be like $300. So, that said, you can actually get a core box and you can get the other two Titans for just another $60. Don't need it. You don't need it. You don't need it, Hammers. You don't need monsters and dice. You don't need monster risk. I don't need it. I don't need it. I totally don't need it. Anyway, that is Battle Monsters. I don't need it, but maybe you do. Maybe I do. Ugh, FOMOMOFO. Fucking hate this shit. Anyway, that is the only thing I was really watching. The other thing that's coming up right now is there's a lot of horror stuff coming. It's a really good time if you're a horror fan. There's big stuff, there's medium stuff, there's little stuff. So right now you've got Brightview Haunting, which is out. It's a really cheap and cheerful game. It looks like a little indie project. I'm not going to go into details. Go have a look. It's not for me because it looks a little bit too undercooked, maybe. It's also $58 for the game and $52 shipping to Australia. No. Hollow Pact is another one that's out right now. Hollow Pact is, it's a lot bigger and meatier. It's got a lot going on. It looks like beautiful production. It's a major piece of work. It's, and again, go have a look. I'm not going to go into detail too much because I have been watching the horror stuff because there's really good horror stuff coming out. And there's one that I'm hoping it's either going to launch this coming week or next week that I've been really keen to see the details on. But you've got Hollow Pact is out. Hollow Pact is $345 Australian. It's about another $100 shipping. So you're on like 27 and 28% shipping as a shipping differential. I remember a time when $300 was a lot for a new game. I remember pledging my first $300 game. I think it was actually Castles of Burgundy was the first one I pledged that was like $300 for everything and all that. And I'm like, oh my God, I've never paid that much for a board game. I'm like, $300? These days, honestly, you know, for good quality game, it's 2025. I don't know. I mean, there's some things I've pledged of late that were less than that, but the likes of things like Avalon the Riven Vale and Revenant and any of the Lacerdas that are coming out, they're all around that sort of 200-ish and change and shipping. $300 these days for a really good quality board game. It's not a big ask anymore. It's really not. 350 and another 100 in shipping. I start to question not whether I'll buy it, but whether I'll get the value out of it. That said, as we talked about value proposition, I don't know, 20 episodes ago. If it's value to you, it's value to you. Holopack looks cool. There's 2 up and coming still. Terror Escape 2 is coming out, so we're talking about up and coming games. But we've also got the Dawn of Madness complete collection. Now, Dawn of Madness is like a horror game. It's gritty, and it's like, I think it's rated R because it's got some very serious themes. It's got some very serious narrative. It's the kind of game that I would play solo, and I think get a lot of gameplay out of. Dawn of Madness looks fantastic. So the production looks great. I have no idea what's coming with about pricing and whatnot. Dawn of Madness was, I think, a crowdfunding game a few years ago, and so now they're re-releasing with all the expansions and whatnot, and it looks great. I think if I'm in for any of these 4, it's probably going to be Dawn of Madness. Very excited. And also launching this week is, I believe it's launching this week, is Trismegistus, which is the remake. It's like Trismegistus. I don't know why they're not calling it second edition, because it seems to have a lot of differences in both in gameplay, but also the graphics design is wildly different. It looks great. So that's launching this week. That is the end of FOMO. Not the end of FOMO. The end of FOMOMOFO, the segment. FOMO's eternal. This week there is no incoming. There's a dry spell. It's winter. Postman Pete's on strike. I don't know what he's doing. I did receive my ARCS errata pack, which is a teeny tiny packet of cards to fix ARCS. There's no other incoming.
Voices in my head, I'm talking to myself. What board game should I get down off the shelf?
This week on Voices in My Head, I'm going to talk about campaigns. Now, I'm not talking about crowdfunding campaigns. I'm talking about campaign games. And I've talked about campaign games in the past in sort of what I love and don't love so much about them. But having played Frosthaven all day yesterday and having played a whole lot of campaign games in the last sort of couple of years, I want to talk about campaign games and how they present me personally with staying power. Because some campaigns, they're really quite light and breezy and they're over fairly quickly, and there's some that are a major investment of life and time. There's some that sit in the middle, and there's all kinds. And it's interesting to me how they vary in how they keep you engaged. So, ostensibly I'm going to talk about campaigns in sort of small, medium, and MURKA sizes. MURKA's like the big gulp. It's like the extra large from Costco. It's like the super size me campaign game. And just, I guess, how they differ for me personally and why I'm attracted to each one, and perhaps what might happen with each of these sort of groups to end my love and relationship with them. So let's talk about the little ones. So we're talking about small, and in this one, I'm not talking about stuff like Legacy of You or Revive or any of those things that have kind of a little campaign element tacked on, for your dining pleasure kind of thing. I'm talking about campaigns that are kind of there's a real groundswell of campaign style games coming out now that are 3-session arcs. And forgive the ARCS pun, because ARCS is one of them we're going to talk about, but 3-session arcs. So let's talk about ARCS: The Blighted Reach. Great campaign. I played that. I've played through it once. I think I would really like it. I just need to play it a couple more times and just work out how to play. I think more than anything, because I think ARCS is a great game. I think the campaign has the potential to be something amazing, but it's 3 sessions. And if you're really good at the game and you've experienced the game, it's 3 sessions that are done and dusted all up in like 6 or 7 hours, right? So you've done all 3 sessions done in 6 or 7 hours. I think we're not at the point where we're playing fluidly enough that we're that fast, but I think it easily could be. And another one that sort of, these 3-session arcs that I'm talking about, like Elder Scrolls, which just came out as one of these. It's a 3-session arc. Now each session is somewhere between 3 and 5 hours, depending on how you roll with it. And they've got a great save mechanic. So you can clip lids on everything, put it away and bring it out again. And so Elder Scrolls is one, and Hoplamax Victorum, another one of my favorites. We've got 2 there by Chip Theory that's basically playing on this 3-session campaign, where I think Victorum's 4 sessions, to be honest, and each of those is 3 or 4 hours. So you're talking about sort of 12-hour investments for some of these big ones, biggie smalls. For the biggie smalls, it's like 12 hours or so. And there's a lot coming out in I think in my pipeline. You're talking about Lands of Evershades. One's coming out. It's end of this year, next year, whatever it is. They're focusing on that same sort of 3 sessions of sort of 2 to 3 hours each, and it's a really tasty morsel that, you know. And I think part of the reason for that is there's a lot of gamers that can go, hey, do you want to commit to 4 years with me of playing this game like Frosthaven? Do you want to do that? Because people are like, hey man, I don't know where I'm going to be living in 4 years. Never mind where I'm going to be gaming. And so I think it's great that these come out, because the gameplay, I mean, when we talk about Elder Scrolls, it's not a pared down gameplay by any means. You know, you've got this, and calling it a campaign, I think, is probably overcooking it a little bit. You've got this arching narrative that goes all the way through that's super clever. And don't get me wrong, I haven't finished my first campaign yet. I played session 1 twice, because I played session 1 and got destroyed and decided I would start again with 2 new characters. And so I've played session 1 of a second campaign. I've yet to finish campaign, so I don't know how I'm going to feel about it when it's done. I am mad for Elder Scrolls. I'm also playing the Oblivion remaster right now, so that's eating into a little bit of my board gaming. But it's not like a Frosthaven or an Oathsworn or an Isis Vanguard. It doesn't have that level of narrative, but there is a story that follows you along, you know, and it's great. And having a room that's dedicated to gaming means if I can't finish that whole 3-4 hour session, I just walk away, leave it on the table, walk away, come back, and awesome. Hoplomachus Victorum, it's lighter gameplay. It's a more rinse repeat kind of thing. I kind of think of it as like Greek Gladiator, Marvel United kind of thing, where it's like junk food. You know, you're getting it out there, and there's no narrative in Hoplomachus Victorum. The narrative is the progression and development of your Hoplomachus, of your gladiator. That's your narrative, is how strong he gets, what I guess extra abilities he has, because there's no equipment really. So there's no RPG elements in it. And there's no narrative. There's teeny tiny little pockets of narrative attached to each of the missions you do. But they're very, very light touch. You know, it's like, well, because you're Hoplomachus. You're basically going from city to city, and you hop into an arena, and you're trying to kill someone, or trying to beat someone down, or try to not kill someone in some of them, right? So you've got these little goals to lay over. Hoplomachus is fantastic. And Hoplomachus Victorum is an exclusively solo game. It's an exclusively solo version of Hoplomachus. It is outstanding as a game. There's not a lot of narrative in there. And I actually think that's one of its catches, is you're not reading in between. There's no upkeep in between. You're just going through this great gameplay loop, you know, of, well, now I'm doing this version. I'm going to travel to this city. Now I'm doing this version of an event, and I'm traveling to this city. And then at 4 different times, there's 4 acts, you've got to have big boss battles. And if any of those boss battles go wrong, you're out. You're done. You're done. The campaign is over. So if you get to the end of Act 1, which is, I think, from memory, 12 days, whatever the case is, maximum, and you do the boss battle and the boss kicks your ass, the campaign's over. I don't mind that, right? Because it's not like you've invested 75, 85, 125 hours. It's like, well, your dude died. What you do is, if you want to keep playing, you go, you grab a new setup, and you go again. And again, Hoplomachus, like Elder Scrolls, what they've got is this exceptional save system. You've got this gargantuan plastic, like, arena stand that holds all the bits to play. And when you're done playing, you take the cards out of it and you file them away. You throw a lid on it, and all your chips are preserved, all your dice are preserved, and it goes away. It is dead set easy to save and put away and come back to. Absolutely dead set easy. And you can put it away and come back to it 3 months later, or you can come back to it the next day. It's awesome. Hoplomachus is an awesome, awesome game. But that rinse-repeat gameplay is great, and it's the kind of thing that I play in fits and bursts. So I'll get it out, and I'll play it a lot for like a month, and then I'll put it away for 3 or 4 months. So I'll get it out and play it a lot for another month. And I love that. It's not because it gets boring, but it's like it scratched that itch. And sometimes I played it, I'll get it out, I get wiped. I get absolutely wiped at the first Primus battle. I go, okay, we'll stuff it. I have so much Hoplomachus that setting it up with a new character and a new end game and a new Primus in between is so easy, right? And I think they've done really well with making it the kind of game that is easy to restart, and if you finish, it's great. I think I've only ever won 1 game of Hoplomachus, and I don't even mind, because it's about the gameplay loop and the ease of resetting. And then you got arcs to play to reach. I think, did we talk about arcs already? God, not enough coffee. So that's the smalls. The biggie smalls. Okay, and they're great, and I love the way that they grab you and they pull you in, and you play and you play and you play. And then let's go to the medium size. These are the mids. They're not mid by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm calling them the mids. And in here, I've got a number of examples. So let's talk about Arkham Horror. Arkham Horror, God, Super Trooper might correct me, but Arkham Horror is like 8 to 10 sessions kind of thing, or 8 to 10. When I say sessions, like, you know, a session could be 40 minutes, could be 2 hours, and the narrative is spectacular. You've got in here, I'll include Jaws of the Lion, which I think was 25 scenarios. You don't have to play all of them. I played Jaws of the Lion, really enjoyed it. Stuff like Oathsworn and Agamonia, which are big, beautiful, amazing, narrative-driven campaigns. But again, I think Oathsworn is 20 scenarios and Agamonia is 25. And again, you don't necessarily do all of them. In Agamonia, you choose one. You actually, I think, eliminate sometimes one of the others you could choose from. And they're great because they have this fantastic balancing act between length of campaign and narrative investment, I suppose. You know, none of these have much of an RPG investment. Oathsworn has a little bit of deck building as you build your character, which is kind of akin to what you do with your characters in Gloomhaven and Frosthaven, as in Jaws of the Lion. Agamonia, you are building your character up. You know, you level up and you're choosing new, I guess, sort of actions that you have access to. But it's fairly lightweight because it's all dice chucking based on the actions. And you know, Arkham Horror, there's no, well, some of your characters can get a little bit more powerful if you, as you unlock, obviously your deck building, you're unlocking more powerful cards. But the characters themselves actually typically get weaker as the game goes on. You know, you're taking trauma. And so your characters are actually sort of, sometimes at the end of the scenario, your characters are limping through with the last vestiges of their humanity. And I think the way the mids do it well is by giving you that great balancing act of, well, we're going to give you meat and we're going to give you flavor. We're giving you both of those, right? We're giving you meat and we're giving you flavor. And I don't think I quite finished Jaws of the Lion. I think I got to about scenario 19. And it's because I was playing with Lou and she tapped out. She was like, no, I've kind of had enough of that. And I thought, well, I could limp through this solo, but it was more about the joint experience than finishing the game. You know, the narrative in Jaws of the Lion was fine. I wouldn't call it overly deep. It was fine. I wouldn't call it a narrative-driven game. The narrative is a nice bit of flavor that layers over, but it's a dungeon crawler rinse repeat. And I totally respect, you know, the Jaws of the Lion, Gloomhaven diehards are going to say, well, no, each of the missions has a story attached to it. It does. It's like, well, you're there to do something, you're there to accomplish something, and then you're hacking at columns, and it's a blast. It's a blast. But the integration between Jaws of the Lion gameplay and the narrative, it's pretty light. You know, we're talking about Agamonia in detail. Agamonia manages to, it's almost narrative heavy. You know, you've got these scenarios that you're playing through, but the narrative is absolutely underwriting everything that's happening in the scenario, and the scenario will change dramatically in between, you know, certain bits. And Oathsworn, well, I can't answer an Oathsworn. I've only played 3 scenarios of Oathsworn. I started it solo, and I went, nope, I'm going to pause here and reset and play with friends, because Oathsworn seems to be fantastic. And the mids, they've got this balance. And then you've got the MURKA fuck yeah level, the uber ones, okay? And I'm really just going to talk about 2 here, because it's 2 that I've experienced. So here I'm going to talk about, and I've talked about both these games, but Frosthaven and Aeon Trespass, these are uber campaigns. These are massive commitments. You are committing a massive amount of your life to play these, and to be honest, they're wildly different. You know, they're both really, I have a very, very clear preference. I'm enjoying both, let me say. So Frosthaven, let's start there. So Frosthaven, and this is probably linked a bit to my drop-in, drop-out nature of Frosthaven, in that I don't feel necessarily overly connected to the narrative of Frosthaven. There is a narrative, there's a story every step of the way. You know, you've got the Great Foreteller app that's narrating what's happening, but it feels like 50 mini stories that we're kind of chasing down. Now, again, this may be directly related to the fact that I've dropped in, dropped out of this. You know, there's plenty of this game that the guys have played that I haven't been there for. I've only done somewhere between 18 and 20 sessions of Frosthaven. I can't remember. But again, it does feel like very much, well, now we're in this room. We're hacking and slashing our way through this. This is what we're doing. We're hacking and slashing our way through. You know, in contrast to something like Agamonia in the mids, some of the missions, it's a retrieval. Well, I guess they are in. We played a scenario yesterday that was we had to get a guy out of the dungeon. We had to get to him first, and then we had to get him out of the dungeon. So, look, I'm not trying to underdo or pay a disservice to the Frosthavens, Gloomhavens, of the world. They are exceptional at what they do, and they are huge, and they are massive, and there are all kinds of things that are going on with them. And the narrative is good. I think the linking of the missions is done really well. Aeon Trespass is like, I've never experienced gameplay like Aeon Trespass, and I really I had minor, I wouldn't call them concerns, but just anxieties around, am I going to get bored of this KDM model of, well, I'm going to go out now, I'm going to fight the monster, and then, we're fighting the same fucking monster, and look, it's the same monster. It's really, really interesting the way the game layers on different things for you to think about. And part of it's not just the layout of the dungeon, because that doesn't change much. You get extra tiles that go out that give you another objective. But the equipment you unlock to take into these battles is really different in that, we know we're going in to fight now the Labyrinthosaurus, who's going to trample the shit out of us. Well, I need something that allows me to avoid trample, and it's a really simple thing. But you layer over that. The narrative in ATO and Aeon Trespass is everything. The narrative story from one step to the next. I mean, you've got all these offshoots, you've got your R&Rs and your adventures, but the main narrative, it is so engaging that, when the guys say, hey, we're playing a Frosthaven day, I'm like, oh yeah, that's going to be fun. When Supertruth says, can we get an ATO day night? I'm like, fuck yeah, we can get an ATO day night. And here's the other thing that because I want to try and unpick how these hold us. And because that's what this is about, is how do the different campaigns grab us and hold us? And the only thing I can come to with something like a Frosthaven and ATO is that it taps into our hardwired completionist nature. Those of us that are like, I want to accomplish something really, really massive. And these are for us, because they're not for everybody. Oh my Christ, they're not for everybody, right? Aeon Trespass is going to be something stupid like 300 to 500 hours by the time we're done. Not counting for the fact that we restarted Cycle 1. Okay, so let's touch on that. We were, 35 hours into Cycle 1, and we'd actually unlocked the ability to skip ahead to Cycle 2. We'd gotten to a point in the story was when, if you wish to start Cycle 2, you may do so now. We're like, oh, let's play a little longer. 2 more sessions later. Bow, bow. No, you will not be starting Cycle 2 because you're all fucking dead. Okay, so this campaign, Aeon Trespass, has hard fail. It's like, boom, hard fail. And we basically came to a point where we were reading something in the book, and I got to a point where it said, you have failed the cycle. Proceed to resetting. And I looked up at Super Trooper, and he looked at me, and we kind of went, oh. And to be honest, I was really gutted. I'm like, oh man, this is going to suck. So I thought, this is going to suck. What's really interesting, not interesting, it's clever, is that if you restart, obviously you restart with a few extra bennies, which is great. But a lot of the stuff, because there's so much narrative in Aeon Trespass, so many stories you're working your way through, your progress through many of the stories is preserved if you start again. So you're not going back and going, well, now you're seeing the farmer, and there's no farmers. You're seeing the farmer, and you're talking to him about his cow. It's a stupid example. You don't. You get to go back to that story where you left off. You've got to do the opening chapter, and then you get to pick up where you left off with the hopes of actually finishing some of these stories. There's this code-breaking puzzle in the game, which we committed to for the first part of the playthrough and half the second part, and then I was just like, oh, dude, I can't do it. And Super was like, yeah, no, let's Google that motherfucker, because we've got enough data to figure it out. We just don't have enough impetus and drive and cleverness to figure it out. So there's a code-breaking thing, but all your knowledge of that carries over. Really clever. And so I think we've decided just subtly, if we hard fail Cycle 1 again, we'll probably just look at each other, nod, and go to Cycle 2. I don't know. We'll see. I don't think we will, because we're much better players now. We're much better players than we were through the start of the first pass of Cycle 1. And I think that's almost the point. I think I'm enjoying the game now more than I was in the first playthrough. But I'll tell you what. If you said to me, we've hard failed Frosthaven, we've got to start again, I'd be like, fuck this shit, I'm out. Nope, I've had fun, but there's no way I'm starting again. Now, Frosthaven doesn't have hard fail, right? And I think when you've got that much gameplay, although it's not like Frosthaven has more gameplay than ATO, I just think the style of gameplay is, rinse, repeat, keep going. So, all that to say, how do they hold our attention? Oh, man, I just think it's because we're all on the spectrum just a little bit. We look at these games and go, yeah, I want to commit 3 years of my life to this. I want to spend all this time with this one character. Look, but the way they do it at different levels is very different, and I appreciate it all. And I know I've talked about campaigns before. You might go, well, this doesn't sound like new content. It sounds like I'm not rehashing. This is a totally different lean on it. It's a totally different lean on campaigns. I'll probably talk about campaign games again in 6 months when I have new insight and wisdom to offer you all. I do love a campaign game. This week's clap goes to the U.S. Navy. In an 8-day period, they've managed to drop 2 F-18s into the ocean and somehow accidentally shoot one of their own down. How you accidentally shoot down one of your own planes? Like, how fast are they on that motherfucking trigger? They shot down one of their own planes. I have a suggestion for DOGE, which is the Department of Government Efficiency. Stop dropping planes into the ocean. Here's a clap for you. You guys are hilarious. And that concludes this week's therapy session. Thank you, OMC crew, for your listening ear and for spending 80 megabytes of your precious data allowance on me. Not sure what I'm going to fit in this week, but next Saturday, Super Trooper and I have another full day night of ATO on the calendar, so there's that. You can reach me on all the socials. And you can help OMC by dropping me a like on Facebook or Instagram, or a review on whatever platform you listen to. If it's a bad review, I will not cry myself to sleep. I will be okay. This week's episode has been brought to you by Artificial Sweetener, the sweetest of all sweetener. Thank you as always for your time. Your time is precious, and the fact that you chose to waste an hour of it listening to how I spend my time is always humbling. Until next time, get your game on. Even if you've got to play with yourself, just don't tell anybody. Peace out, mofos.
Locked in the bunker, shadows shake. One man clapping secrets awake. Board games living, dice they break. Echoes pounding, hearts they quake. In the bunker, board games rolling. One man clapping, stories growing. Hard rock thunder, speakers blowing. Clapping loud, the unknown.
More coffee. I need a little more coffee to get through this day.